Good. How are you?
I'm good. So I've actually been trying to get you to sit down for a little while now. So thanks for fitting this into your schedule.
Oh, totally. I'm really excited. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So I wanted to, I guess let's just preface this by kind of get into what it is you do and about your organization, and then also the other things we've talked about before this.
Yeah, totally. My name's Cassie Hammett, and I'm the founder of the Hub Urban Ministries here in Shreveport. The Hub, we're going into our 18th year of ministry in 2025, which is kind of crazy because I still feel so young. Like, how have I been doing something for 18 years? But we have been in this community for 18 years. We work primarily with people in material poverty, people who are experiencing homelessness, and then women and children who have been sexually exploited, as well as victims of sex trafficking here in the community and honestly the state and the region. So we've been doing that work for 18 years. I did found that organization. I did found the Hub out of the trunk of my car. It all
How did that
started.
happen?
Yeah. How did that happen?
Yeah.
That is a very loaded question.
All right, let's go.
Yeah. So I went to Louisiana Tech, graduated from Louisiana Tech, got married to my tall drink of fine is what I call him. Brent is his name. And we moved to Shreveport so that I could work at the Shreveport Rescue Mission. It had recently opened its downtown women's shelter. So I applied for that job. The reason I would even apply for that job is because I felt very convicted that was what the Lord had for my life was to...
What age were you when this happened?
When I applied for that job, I was 20.
What had you done before then?
Nothing.
So you had no connection. This was just something that kind of just come about.
So
okay.
I had odd jobs in college. I was a waitress for a day, that kind of stuff. But I knew that working with people in poverty was what I was made for. I knew that.
And it wasn't something that was like that you went through at a younger age or something?
No.
It's just a calling that hit you?
Yes, it did. Thankfully, I was raised by parents who didn't shelter me from realities of life. I was raised in a way I understood that there were people in poverty. I was raised in a really balanced home that I wasn't sheltered.
Okay,
like I understood, that there were things going on. And just like a lot of people in the South took a bunch of mission trips, with churches. And so was exposed in that way to the reality of what was going on in the world. And so that was pretty young in high school. And so when I was in college, I just knew deep down that is what I had been made to do, which is a pretty bizarre thing to...
That's why I asked. It was like some people have like something they went through younger or something, someone close to that, whatever it may be. But no, I mean...
Yeah. So when I graduated, I saw that they were hiring for that job here, and I was born and raised in Shreveport. And so my family's here. And so I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like the Venn diagram, right? Like I can work and do the thing I'm supposed to do in a city I love near my family. So we moved back here. I never thought I would move back to Shreveport, not for any bad reasons, just never thought that this is where I would land permanently. But we moved back and I started working there. And over the course of working there for about 9 months is really where this sort of dream that now 18 years later is a thing started, which was this reality of, man, our city has a lot of brokenness and darkness and a lot of people who are truly disconnected from society relationally. They don't have anyone. And also, this is one of the most churched, cities in America. Yeah. And so I just had this dream of what would it look like to bridge the gap between those two realities and bridge the gap between those in poverty and homelessness and exploitation and those who aren't. Because I think that's a pretty big chasm usually in a community. And so the dream wasn't just to serve the homeless or feed the hungry. That's all part of it. But the bigger dream was, what would it look like to, in our city, build a bridge between the two realities and see those two realities come together and it not be so vastly separated between the haves and the have-nots, or whatever you want to say. Because I knew our city had a lot of incredible people in it. I was raised here. A lot of resources, a lot of access to influence. I knew that existed. And those are the things that the people I was meeting needed.
Yeah.
But what they needed more than that was people, just friendships, just like you and I have. And so I didn't mean to start the Hub. I didn't have a plan for it. I didn't even I don't even think I ever thought about what it would be like to be a nonprofit. I didn't have that language. I was just like, I got to do something. And so the craziest thing about the story of the hub is that it did start really small out of the trunk of my car. But it grew really quickly. There was this up and to the right motion of involvement in the city that was really hard to keep up with at the beginning. I didn't plan for that. I would meet someone, I would hear someone's story, and then maybe you and I knew each other because we grew up together. We went to high school, all that small town stuff. So I'd see you and be like, bro, you would never hear this story and never believe what I learned. This is what's going on. Yeah. And then you'd be like, what?
So you're physically passing that on, with emotion.
And then you'd be like, just like you would if I told you right now, you'd be like, what do I do? What do we need to do?
Yeah.
And I would say, I don't know. Let me get back to you. And I would come back to you and be like, hey, here's what this situation needs or this person needs. And because this is easy to do, you'd be like, let me text 10 people. We got this. Then you would gather all these things, whatever it might be, sleeping bags, whatever it was. And you'd call me back. This is literally how it happened. Hey, we got all this stuff for you. Come pick it up and you can take it to them. And I'd say, you can bring it to me. We can go together.
Gotcha.
Because and that wasn't some like maniacal plan of mine. I just knew, man, I want you to know what I know. I don't want to do the work for you.
Yeah, it's kind of like the coat drive thing. You can drop those off, but there's no connection there. There's no connection. And so then you're not going to be passing that information.
You're not transformed. Yeah. And what I knew is walking with people in homelessness and poverty had transformed me. And I wanted people to know that it was that simple. Like I did not have a plan. But what would happen is you'd show up with your friends, your small group of church, your business, whatever, your coworkers who collect all these things. And I would be like, let's go. And we'd walk down to this homeless camp. And then you guys would meet these individuals and then you were changed. And then what started happening was people were like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
Right. And I know that was the sweet spot in our city at the time, was that no one had been a guide into that world and built a bridge, because it wasn't that people didn't want to help. Because I think sometimes nonprofit leaders can get a little judgy and be like, we're doing this because you're not,
Yeah.
And I knew that wasn't the truth. I knew from the very beginning, it's not that people don't want to. It's that they don't know how. It's a very intimidating thing.
Not only that, but I don't think that many people realize what exists either.
Exactly.
They're so unplugged.
Lack of knowledge.
If it's not in your route, if you don't read an article on it,
that's right.
Like if you don't see a post.
Yeah, and even seeing posts and articles doesn't really matter as much anymore.
Right. Yeah, because you see so much now. Right. One, you don't even know, is this true? Is this is this something for something?
But it's really hard to argue when you're looking at someone in the face.
Yeah.
It's really hard to, and this is the other thing I think the hub has always been a really cool place for, is you can have a lot of opinions, but when you're sitting across from someone who's suffering, or someone who's homeless or can't find work, or lives under the poverty line, those opinions, they're not as weighty anymore. When you're sitting across from someone, they begin to shift and change, because you're looking at the reality of the situation versus sort of these ideas that can be formed on Facebook or politically formed even. It's very different when you're sitting across from someone and listening to them, So again, I didn't set out to do that necessarily. I was more like, I just wanted to invite people into what I was learning while I was learning it. So like, it was not like I was the expert.
Yeah.
I was learning it at the same time, and it just, honestly, it exploded quickly. And then I was like, like, I need to do something here, because, we have all this need, and now all of this traction and all this energy, and people are looking to me and going, what do we do? Hundreds of people. It's like overnight. And so I was behind. I was literally late to my own party. I was literally like, I guess I should get a nonprofit status. So, I remember my dad coming to me, because he owns his own business. And I remember him being like, hey, you need to, become a nonprofit 501c3. And I was like, nah. And he was like, well, you are taking people's money and doing stuff with it. So at some
already
point,
are one. You just got
he's like, and it's going through your own personal account. So at some point you're going to have to, and so I always tell that story because I think people could have a perception of the hub story that isn't that. That is, they had a plan from the very beginning, and this thing started, and it wasn't. It was very grassroots and organic, and still is. I mean, we are organized and we have, our stuff together, but we still want to be led by the actual reality of people's lives. And we don't want to be this big, shiny nonprofit, that just fuels itself and doesn't need anybody. Yeah. We still need and want people to be involved with us. And so I think that's kind of the story of how it started. I did go, you asked about like any kind of personal connection. I did in my early 20s before the hub started, I did walk through a really severe season of mental health issues. I do think that coming out of that and, walking through healing and sort of being on the other side of that level of mental health struggle did give me more fuel to the fire, because I realized that a lot of people who are suffering in our city are suffering with depression, anxiety, all of these heavy mental health issues. And it did sort of give me just a perspective that I didn't have before, that I could sit across from someone who says, well, you wouldn't understand. And I could actually say, no, I have walked that. I have looked at that dead in the face. I've been at the bottom of that pit thinking I would never come out of it. And so I do think that sort of became a driving passion of mine, was to be the rope that gets thrown to people who feel the way I felt in that season of just, this is just how I will die, essentially. And so there was that was sort of a part of the equation in me, and really just my life was radically changing as a result of these friendships with people who were so different than me. And I just wanted people to know that. I still do. I mean, that's the thing that drives me, is I just want people to know. I want people to know what a life could look like if you really understood like the realities of people who are different and people who don't have materially what you do. Because the truth is, our material possessions make up a very small part of who we are.
Yeah,
and
especially if you see both sides of the fence.
Yes.
Like when you strip that all away, what's really there?
Yeah, we're really more alike than we are different. And so I am who I am because of those relationships. And so that's kind of like the story of how the hub started. And then from there, we just have always set out to stay really in tune with the realities of suffering in our city and try to build responses to that. And so out of that was born the Lovewell Center, which is downtown, where we serve people in poverty and homelessness. And then also out of that was born Purchased, Not for Sale, which is our anti-trafficking ministry here in the city. And, Purchased was born organically out of the reality of what was happening in our city. We were meeting women on the street who were homeless, or, who were considered the working poor, who were kind of that tightrope between homelessness and house. We were meeting women in those situations, and almost every single time exploitation was a part of their story. And what I mean by that is for survival. And we were hearing, what we were really hearing were stories of sexual exploitation, which you can, that can be prostitution or pornography or whatever it might be, was driven by survival, was driven by poverty. And then we were encountering women who were being sold against their will, and they were just telling us this because we were earning their trust. And so they were telling us these stories, and we were looking around in our city asking, what do we do? Because this was 2010, 9-10. So back then, the landscape for the conversation of human trafficking was radically different than it is now.
What, just so people understand, what does that look like?
Yeah, it was just a non-existent conversation at the time. Okay. Meaning, I think people had a general sense of what prostitution was and what human trafficking was. If they, a lot of times the thought was, oh, like the movie Taken, yeah, there was a general understanding. But as far as it happening here, and as far as there being formal responses, in that era, it was a non-existent, it was a vacuum. There were places women could go. There were domestic violence shelters. There were regular just homeless shelters. Those things existed. There were services for women. But this is a whole different ballgame in itself. So there wasn't anything that was like, if a woman's being trafficked, what happens?
Yeah.
And the way we learned that was the hardest way possible. Was a friend of ours that we had met on the street got into a human trafficking situation while we were friends with her. And so the way we learned that there wasn't anything was by trying to get her out.
Okay.
And so it was this firsthand, like, oh no, there isn't a way out here that is clear. And so again, like I said at the beginning, once we started having conversations with people in the city, law enforcement, the DA's office, everybody wanted to do it. That's what's always been cool about what we have found about our city is you're not getting a lot of resistance. It's not like you guys suck, so now we have to do it. It's just the conversation wasn't being had. And so we just started having that conversation. We just became the beginners of that conversation in all of these spheres to say, here's what we're seeing in real time. You know, here's what your system is set up to do. What can we do to create a pathway out for people, first of all, and then a pathway to where people get held accountable for what they're doing. And so that purchase was born just as organically as the hub in general was born. I mean, it was just kind of we had a friend, she was experiencing this. We jumped in to do something, which is what the hub's known for. We just are like, all right, I guess we got to figure this out. And then after that situation, we were like, we have to do this. This is something we, as a ministry, have to take, by the horns and figure out. And so that's sort of what launched what is now Purchased, which is 2011 is when we launched. So I can't do the math there, but we're well into doing this ministry now in our community after all of those years and a lot of conversations and partnerships and fights with, a long road. We do have now a pathway out in our city, and it's pretty clear, and all of the entities that need to be involved are involved, and Purchased is connected to every system in our city, the DA's office on both sides of the river, the sheriff's office, SPD, Bossier PD, DCFS, foster care. I mean, we have really good working partnerships in all of those places. And because of that, and because we're all sort of working together and we communicate a lot, we stay connected, there is a really strong response in our community when it comes to human trafficking. So that's the good news. It's not where it started. So
yeah, I'd already met you prior, but I had Chris Plants on. We were talking about you guys had
Chris, he's my biggest fan, and I'm his biggest fan.
So when he was over the bureau here, he said you guys had some sort of task force.
Yeah.
That was how did that work? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So when Chris was at the bureau here locally, we had a local human trafficking task force, and I can't remember how many years that thing ran. It has since shut down, and basically the way that task force works is that it is made up of local law enforcement and local entities. So the FBI runs that task force, but who's at the table is all, is Bossier PD, Bossier Sheriff's Office, Shreveport PD. I mean, it was all of the right. Local players. And so the way that it worked was it was this kind of united front to working human trafficking in our community and being proactive. So doing undercover stings, sharing information, using all of the systems in place to sort of get ahead of what was going on. And then the hope in every case was not just to provide a way out for that victim, but for that case to go to a federal level so that pimp or perpetrator served the amount of time that they deserved. And so that was kind of the whole goal was like twofold, was to work together, because when you work together, especially with our cities, being separated by a river, right? But shared information is really powerful. And so it wasn't disconnected, right? There was this unifying connection between information that was being gathered. So at the time, I was a civilian FBI agent. I can't remember the name of it. It wasn't agent, but civilian something. So that gave me the clearance to be on that task force. And the reason why we ended up landing in that position is because when it comes to the women in our city and the kids in our city that are being exploited, we have the most trust there.
Yeah.
We're respected the most, more than law enforcement for sure. So what was happening early on was we had all this information, and I was just going Chris at the time wasn't in charge when I first met him. He was an agent as well. And I was just like, hey, I feel like you should know this. And actually, let me back up. Chris came to meet me because so many women in prostitution were saying when they were getting arrested, call Cassie.
Okay.
They were actually suspicious of me because anytime a group of women in prostitution are saying somebody's name, usually that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
And so that's always been the joke, is that he came in to suss me out. And
thought you were a madam or something.
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah. I mean, because
rightfully so, if you don't know who that is.
If you don't know,
you just hear a name. Yeah,
exactly. So I was like, oh no, like, and I just explained, like, hey, we have all of this stuff going on that we've built. We've built this hotline. We've built these outreaches that we're doing every week. We have all these programs. And it was this really cool moment where the FBI and law enforcement realized that we had done all this work over here, but we were disconnected. And so then it was like, oh, well, this just needs to become a partnership because we had what they needed, and they have what we needed, which was protection and all that kind of stuff. So that's how that partnership developed. And then over time, and we have been present for any and every undercover sting that happens in our city. We are always there, always invited. We always have a place, whether that's in Bossier or Caddo, which is just, I mean, this is a huge honor to be in the room when those things are going on, and to be the first person that someone talks to after experiencing so much trauma. So all of those partnerships began early on as just knocking on the door, having the conversation. But I would say our law enforcement partnerships, even to this day, are the strongest of. You don't find what we have here very often, because an NGO and law enforcement typically don't love each other.
Yeah.
But that's just not the case for us here. We love our law enforcement officers. When we go on stings, we always feed them. We always bring Chick-fil-A and pizza, and that's probably why they want us there. It's probably not. But they are always first to call us and say, hey, this is what's going on. I mean, we've had conversations where they don't know what to do, so they come and ask for us for advice. I mean, it's just a really beautiful friendship and something that we're super proud of. So, and becomes a really powerful tool in our community for actually getting women out and getting kids out. Because here in our community, if you're being arrested for prostitution, or if you're a kid that's been identified as a victim of trafficking, the law enforcement agents that are dealing with that care deeply about that. And that's not always the case. A lot of places,
especially if there's a place that's a lot larger where there's not that, they may be handling all types of.
Right. Yeah. But it even doesn't have to be a large city. A lot of times it's, you got arrested for prostitution, you're getting booked, you're trash.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
Whereas here, the law enforcement agents are not thinking that way first. Now they're making the arrest. And I think this is why law enforcement early on was cool with us being there, is because we weren't saying, don't arrest them. We're like, oh, no, please. Yeah. Because it saves their life.
Yeah.
Literally saves their life. So we've never been opposed or in opposition. Now, I think what any agent that we work with would probably agree with is that us being there has sort of helped shape how those conversations can happen and things like that. But we've never been like, please don't, throwing ourselves down in front of them, like, don't, because the thing is, like, if they did that on their own and if they weren't being trafficked, it is illegal. And so often those consequences become the best thing that has happened to them. And so But just being in the room, working so closely with law enforcement, and here in our community, what I know to be true, because I've seen it with my own eyes, is that these agents are talking to them in a way that is very different. They're making the arrest, and they are cops, but they're also saying things like, hey, you don't have to do this. There's a way out of this, or this is not what you need to be. These really compassionate moments where, and that is not normal. And so I am super proud of that, because I think that it's giving people at the moment of their worst point in life an example of what it looks like to be championed by someone and to say, hey, you have a different option here. You don't have to keep doing this. And so those are some of my favorite moments. What makes
that conversation happen, though, is that knowing that they have someone they can point them to. Because normally that's not the case, like you said. And so, of course, anyone can tell you, hey, you don't have to do this, but what are my options?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Tell me my other options.
And see, here's what's cool about our partnership with law enforcement is they do what they do best, and we do what we do best. And we have clear lines that we don't cross. So, law enforcement, ours are really caring, and ours will start that conversation, but it ain't their job to get that woman out, right? So, their job is to make arrests and protect our community. And what's cool is they defer to us and we defer to them. And there is a line for a police officer where it isn't their responsibility to walk with that person to get them out. And so I think the security they have is that we can just pass this person, not in a flippant way, but we do know that there are resources and we can pass this person knowing we don't have to worry about that piece. We can keep doing our job. And we feel the same way. Law enforcement has a job that we don't do. And so I think that has been, in all of our partnerships, what has made them strong is that we never step out of our lane, and we also respect the lanes of every system we're in. We respect that every system has boundaries, and like the DA's office, it's not always going to end the way we want it to, because the DA has a different set of things they have to work by. And we have always been the partner in the room saying, hey, we don't love that, but we understand it. And we're not going to oppose, right? We're not going to just be this, because I think nonprofits can get a little, I don't know what the word would be.
Excited.
Judgy, but also bleeding heart, where it's just and without recognizing that every system has a set of parameters that they're having. So Purchased has the least amount of parameters. We're rogue. We're just, you know what I mean? So we've been able to say, hey, we want to partner with you, and we want to be a good partner to you. We do not want to be sort of this annoying thorn in your side. And so we work really hard at being that. And I think that has benefited exploited women and children across our region.
Are you solely operating in this area currently, or? Yeah,
so the Shreveport, so the hub has 7 locations in other cities. They're all autonomous. We don't run them all, so they're all run by different boards and different staff. But the one here, all of our outreaches and all of our physical stuff that we do is regional, but we take referrals from all over the country. So we have women get flown to us from California or whatever. So our programs are full of women from all over the place.
What's that protocol look like? Well, I know we talked about metrics earlier, and that's hard to measure. And I think the biggest thing is, I just want him to bring this up just so listeners and viewers have an idea of how many human traffic cases are reported every year.
So I said this before we started. Trafficking stats are really complicated because human trafficking is, I think, the second most underreported crime.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
that's why I said reported. What we can,
exactly.
Only
so,
what we can see. But
I'm trying to think of the best website to send you to. I know that the state of Louisiana, the DCFS, puts out a trafficking report. Is very complicated. So in an hour, you may have your answers.
I'll let him sift through that, see if he can get some data.
So the thing about trafficking stats, a few years ago, some stats came out about Louisiana, and I can't remember the exact number. It was a low number, and people were like, woohoo. And I was like, not necessarily.
Well, I would like to look at them on a national level, because a lot of our viewers and listeners aren't here locally.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is something that, yes, I'm sure is happening here. It's part of your mission, but I would think abroad is an issue everywhere. Yes,
totally. And there's a website called Shared Hope International that has a really good look at the national picture. And also Shared Hope gives every state a grade on how they are dealing with trafficking. So that would be a good resource. Okay. But we always say that the numbers are the tip of the iceberg because of the level of underreporting that's happening. And so, you know, sometimes when you look at us, like we had one year where the number dropped in the reporting, like really low. I think it was 2020, maybe 2019. That sometimes means that people have stopped paying attention.
That was my next question.
Like, not necessarily.
What percentage of people do you think, excuse me, what percentage of people do you think, like, would you say 50 to 70% don't report it? Like,
yeah, I mean, it's high.
Yeah,
it's high.
I would assume so.
And the thing is that most, for us, I'll just speak for us, most actual trafficking cases, like most situations that end up being human trafficking versus exploitation, which I can explain the difference. We don't discover that because the victim necessarily discloses it. We discover it through conversation with a victim who may not understand that that's even what's going on. And so every once in a while, we get a victim just straight up tell us. Like, we had a situation where it's funny because we used to say, like, victims don't typically disclose or hardly ever disclose. And then we had to change our language because we had some situations where they did actually directly disclose. And I think that's changing because the dialogue is so common that a lot of people now understand, oh, this is human trafficking because it gets talked about a lot. Whereas back in the day, a lot of women didn't know that's what was going on. But we did have a situation where a woman went into an ER here in the city and they gave her discharge papers and she just straight up wrote on the back of it, "I'm being trafficked." So like every once in a while that happens. But for the most part, we're identifying it through signs, symptoms, red flags, things we know to look for. And then we're asking questions that would help us understand that that's what's happening versus someone just being able to point blank identify that. First of all, the other reason why it's so underreported is just fear. You know, if you're being trafficked in its purest sense, you have been trained to not disclose.
Okay.
And so because of that, you know, you look at the stats of like how many victims of trafficking go through a hospital system and never get identified. Well, it's because that hospital possibly wasn't trained to know how to identify without someone saying it. So what we always say is they're telling you, they're just not telling you with words.
Okay, got you. But you've figured out a way to kind of read into that a little bit with
yes. And the other thing that we've done is do a lot of training in our community. Every hospital here is trained by us. And so that helps too, because then you have people who know what to look for and the victim doesn't have to come out and say something to get the help that they need. It's pretty crazy. Like, if you know what to look for, you can just start asking some better questions.
What are some of those signs?
So with an adult, things that we always look for, one is lack of eye contact, inability to make eye contact. There's a difference between I don't want to look at you and I can't. Scripted communication, a constant presence either by phone or in person of someone who is, we call it like triangulation, like I ask you a question, you ask that person answers.
Got you. Yeah.
That is obviously, a red flag. Certain types of tattoos, if we've seen them consistently on other people, a lot of times people are like, you can look for tattoos to know, and it's really hard to know. I mean, the only way that we use tattoos is if we've seen the same thing on multiple people, but we have the ability to do that because we do see multiple people.
Right.
So that's something we look for. Multiple cell phones. That's also something we look for. If a woman is like unloading her purse and there's hotel keys and multiple cell phones, that's one sort of red flag that possibly exploitation is going on. Maybe not trafficking, but not having their identifying documents. They don't have their ID, birth certificate. Someone else has it. That's a red flag. Malnutrition, signs of PTSD, multiple STDs, multiple pregnancies, things like that. And this is harder to gauge because you can't put this on paper, but just your gut, man. Like when you're talking to someone.
Yeah, especially if you have experience.
Yeah,
right?
For me, I get a sense of things that other people wouldn't get a sense of. Yeah. But when we train, we do have 2 or 3 pages of like really practical, hey, here's, the top 50 ways you could identify someone. So we do a lot of training that way. And it works. When we take the time to train a hospital system, we start getting calls, because people want to do the right thing. People want to report. And so we've done a lot of work around that. But all that to say, that goes back to why numbers are really tricky, because it may not get disclosed to someone in authority that then reports it up the chain. Yeah. Like we report. So every year we turn our numbers into the DCFS reporting, so that at least we're trying to get an accurate picture of what's going on in Louisiana.
I would venture to guess the only numbers being reported are the ones who are going out of their way to report them.
Yes.
Not the people, but the actual organization.
Yeah, the organizations. Pushing it up the chain. And we do. And the other thing is victims in a community having a place to report. I mean, the numbers are really dependent on boots on the ground. Because if a community doesn't have the response that we have, they're not going to have high numbers. But that doesn't mean that they don't have high numbers of exploitation. It just means that possibly there's not a grid that's catching them.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, it's kind of a complicated conversation.
Yeah, that can't be correct there, like you said.
Yeah, have fun on this stat hunt.
Well, it's just one of those things. Like, well, how many reports do you think you've seen go through physically in your organization in 13 years?
Oh, I mean, I could look it up now. Oh, in 13 years.
Well, I mean, you've been doing it 13 years, right?
Yeah, hundreds.
Hundreds.
Yeah,
hundreds here
easily.
Locally. Yeah.
Yeah, easily. Yeah, and we have ways, like we always report it. We have an internal reporting structure so that we can always go back and look. One of the things that we've developed are just these ways of sharing information. So, for example, this is kind of practical, but let's say we have a conversation with someone in the community at a motel that we're doing an outreach, and we kind of feel like this seems more than just what it appears on the surface. This seems like maybe this person is being trafficked. We have a form that we fill out internally. But anytime we put in any information, it pings certain law enforcement officers and they get it.
Okay.
So that doesn't mean they're going to do something, but they can at least read it. And they can go, this girl at this motel. And sometimes we may put something in there that feels arbitrary. Like we may put, notice these tattoos or whatever. And then someone in Bossier on the task force reads it and is like, hold on. Or a name. She mentioned this name, and it's like, we get a phone call. It's like, hold on, that name is familiar. So we do that no matter what length of conversation is had, or if we think that we don't report every single conversation we have, but if we get a sense that we think there's something a little more here, we always do that. So we've built some ways to keep everyone in the loop without it being a lot of extra work.
What about child trafficking? What does that look like? And what's the protocol on that?
Yes. So what a lot of people don't know is that every victim of trafficking under the age of 18, every person that is sexually exploited under the age of 18 is always a victim of sex trafficking. There is no such thing as a child prostitute. Okay. So that just needs to be taken out of our language. I think often when someone says, oh, that's a child prostitute, there's an idea that there was consent and they wanted to do it. And the truth is, federally, whether they are looking at you in the face saying they wanted to do it, it doesn't matter. The federal law protects children. I always say this, even if it's that 16-year-old girl that's like, F you, I wanted to do this. Doesn't matter. The law still protects her because she is not of age of consent. So any person under the age of 18 that is sexually exploited, commercially sexually exploited, which means something of value was exchanged for a sex act, they are always a victim of sex trafficking. There does not have to be a formal pimp. It could be one time, 1,000 times. I think that's really important because there's a section of people that I think, and I see this in our community, these teenage girls that are running away from home and caught up in a lot of things. It's really easy for it just to be like, oh, and we hear this a lot, she's just a runaway, that's what she does. But what's no healthy kid just up and runs away from home. What are they running from, or what are they running to? That's what we're always asking. There's got to be a reason. I mean, I have kids, you know. When I was young, I did run away one time. My mom made me really mad, and I left and I sat in the bushes, and then I was like, I'm not cut out for the streets. You know, I need some chicken nuggets. I'm hungry.
No, these are people physically leaving in a vehicle with someone they don't know or whatever.
Or just bolting. And I think it's important for people to understand that what child trafficking looks like in our community is not... And I'm not saying movies like Sound of Freedom and Taken, that's happening. Hear me very clearly. That is happening. Yeah. And there is an international element. There is the black market. That is happening. For us here, that is 0.0001% of the cases. And I think it's important for people to understand what it actually looks like.
That's why I wanted to bring it up, and that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you, because when people hear that, they think that.
Yeah.
When they hear that term, that's immediately what they think.
Yeah, they think snatch and grab.
They don't think my child. They don't think my cousin or my sister. You know, they don't think that. They think these people are being shipped here and traded because this
or the other thing people think is the white van scenario in the Target parking lot or the Walmart parking lot, just snatching kids and things like that. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but what we find here is primarily trafficking is born out of extreme poverty. It is often a behavior of a home a child is in, that it is just a way that we pay the bills. It's taught early. Often it is not seen as a negative factor because it's the culture of the home that they're in. We would call that homegrown, prostitution. It's just, and for girls that are experiencing that, there is no recognition really that
that's
this
what
is
I'm saying.
something.
How does that conversation even come to fruition?
Yeah, they just have to be around healthy people
to realize that scenario is not normal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we see a lot of that. We see a lot of familial based trafficking. It's still considered trafficking. A lot of people don't know that, but if your aunt puts you out there, you're being trafficked. Okay, so it doesn't have to be this, formal pimp situation, but that is also happening. So we do see a lot of teen girls getting recruited online through social media apps, starting relationships with people online that then transfer into real life and become really dangerous. A lot of people don't understand the amount of grooming that's happening through social media, and I don't mean like weird apps like I don't mean dark web. I mean Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, things like that. And every time I say that, I feel like an old grandmother. I'm like,
because you're not. Yeah,
but it's the truth.
Yeah, I mean, it is.
It is the truth.
It's the landscape we're in right now.
Exactly. Everything happens online.
My wife's in law enforcement, and I didn't realize this was a scenario, but she was telling me that there was someone that she had to detain that was underage, that had been a runaway, that someone was looking for her. She wouldn't immediately give her real name, but she wasn't being exploited sexually at the time of this incident. She was being exploited to go get prescriptions for someone.
Yeah, she was a mule.
I didn't realize that's considered human trafficking as well.
Yeah, so human trafficking is an umbrella. Sex trafficking is under it.
Right.
There's other forms.
That's why. Yeah. And when she said that, I was like, well, that opens up a whole list of conversations. It's not all just sexual. It's all these other things that they're exploiting these kids to do for them on their behalf, and they just think, well, they're giving me some money or some shoes.
Exactly.
Or whatever.
They're taking care of me.
Yeah.
So a good way to think about what can typically the way that it works with a victim of trafficking, not just a kid, is I don't know if you've ever heard of the Maslow's triangle of hierarchy of needs.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So if you think about that triangle, it's something we all have in common. It starts on the bottom with the most important things for survival: food, water, clothing, things like that. And it moves up to the tip, which is kind of like the most important emotionally to be fulfilled. That's kind of how the triangle works. You can't have the top part if you don't have the bottom part. Because you have to survive. So often what we say about trafficking is it's the exploitation of human need. So someone who wants to sell a child is not going to go to that. Let's take it out of the familial zone because the family stuff,
Okay.
Family stuff can look a little different because it's just part of how they're raised. But a lot of our cases, they're, a situation, maybe they're hanging out in a neighborhood at a gas station that they go to all the time, and someone sees that and begins to take advantage of it. Almost every time, what you can track is the behaviors of that person who's grooming that child are moving up that triangle. So the first thing they're doing is feeding them, getting them something to eat, making sure they have their, basic needs. What a child considers or a teen considers a basic need, making sure they have a phone, things like that.
Yeah.
And it being a no strings attached. Well, the problem is, and this could be because people get real judgy about these girls that are, taking all this stuff from this dude and not really. But the thing is, if you're hungry, if nobody else is feeding you and you're a kid, you can't get a job. You're 14, 13 years old, and someone all of a sudden every week is bringing you food. Put yourself in that situation, you're going to take the food.
Yeah.
If you don't have a cell phone and you're in an unsafe home, you're going to take the cell phone. It's important for us to sort of challenge the way that we think.
Well, the judgment thing is a huge issue anyways, because if you have not been in the scenario at all, you have no opinion. It's kind of like when we get into politics. Like, dude, if you don't know these policies and these procedures, I don't want to know your opinion because you're not educated enough to have this conversation.
Exactly. So I'm thinking of a case one time that I think helps paint a really clear picture of this. But this girl lived in a neighborhood in the city. Her dad was in and out of jail. Her mom was not present. So sometimes dad was home doing what he should do for her and what he could. Sometimes he was in jail. When he was in jail, her and her siblings were sort of at home alone. Aunts and uncles would pop in, but very minimal care. So she would skip school. And this is where it all, people have to understand, kids in these scenarios, they're not just skipping school because they're bad kids. There's reasons. So she's skipping school because no one's in the home waking them up. No one's taking care of them. They don't have their school supplies. They don't have their school uniforms, So she's hanging out at this gas station with this other girl, and this guy comes up, gets gas. And the way I know this story is she told me this story. This is how we figured out she was being trafficked. She didn't know. And so she said, this guy pulled up to get gas. He had a really nice truck. She kept saying that. He had a really nice truck. Well, if you're impoverished, you notice stuff like that. Mm-hmm. He walked past them, went in the gas station to pay, came out and was like, hey, you guys look hungry. Do you want a snack? And they were like, they're teenage girls. So they're like, yeah. And also they haven't eaten she hadn't eaten in days. And so he's like, what do you want? So they go in with him. He gets them snacks, leaves, says nothing. A few weeks later, same thing. But this time he goes in, buys it for them without asking what they wanted, gives it to them. And they're like, oh, freaking sweet. We got free food. And he remembered our favorite stuff. That keeps happening, right? Yeah. They keep hanging out there because they're getting food. So this dude then sort of takes it a step further with one of these kids, and she's walking home and he pulls over and he's like, hey, I know your dad. I'm familiar, your dad's situation. I know that maybe you guys don't have what you need right now. Take my number just in case you need something. Let's trade numbers. So they do. Then groceries start showing up on the porch once a week, enough for her and her siblings. And that happens for months. No strings attached. Just put his name on a note, put his name on it. Groceries every week. So they start going to school because he buys their school uniforms. He buys their school supplies, comes and changes the light bulbs when they go out, make sure the security system at the house is working. Taking care of them. No strings attached. And it progresses from there to where he says, hey, I have a body shop. I work on cars. We're looking for someone to clean the office. Do you want to come in and clean the office? Then you can make your own money. Well, of course, what is she going to say? Yeah. Yes, because now I can provide for my siblings, and now I have some autonomy. She was 15 at the time. So she starts doing that, and he's like, you're the best employee we've ever had. And starts building her self-confidence up. We want you to work here forever. This is the cleanest it's ever been, bragging. Well, who doesn't want to hear that if you've never had a job and you've never... And so you're moving up this triangle, because if you look at the triangle, it goes from basic needs to safety and security to self-esteem. So we're working up this triangle. And then one day she goes after school to work, and he said, hey, if you'll... I don't know what I can say on here. But, if you'll give me a blowjob, I'll give you an extra amount of money. So she's telling me this at a McDonald's. We're just hanging out. And it's currently happening when she's telling me this. And
She's 15.
Mm-hmm. And so internally, I have a really good poker face, but internally, I am
Screaming,
just...
probably, yeah.
And she stops. And she said, I want you to know I didn't want to do it, but I did it. And it was a really impactful moment for me, because what that helped me see was that she understood that I didn't really have a choice here.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do this. But what happens if I say no is I lose everything that I haven't had in over a year or two of my life. My siblings aren't cared for. We don't have what we need. And so she starts doing this behavior for him, making all this extra money. And then the day that she told me, the day before she told me this story, she had gone to work the day before, and he had said to her, hey, if you want, I have 5 or 6 friends that would do the same thing. Okay. So this was the next day. She hadn't gone back to work yet. And she's telling me this. And so I had to calmly sort of help her understand what had happened. But as you hear that story, that was over probably a 9-month period of time.
Well, how did she come into contact with you, and how did you?
She was a part of we have a mentoring program for high-risk teenage girls. Yeah,
okay,
yeah. So she was
she referred there or something? Or?
Yes, she had been referred to us through the juvenile court.
Okay.
Because she was in juvenile court,
so
and they saw some signs and symptoms.
Okay.
So we had some contact with her.
I think it's important for people to know how you got to that conversation.
Yeah, so it hadn't been explicitly known.
Right.
There were some suspicions that something was going on, and so she was in our mentoring program, and that is sort of how the trust had been built over time.
Gotcha.
But I think what's important about her story is that it happened for 9 months or so, this activity. He had never asked her for anything in return. All he was doing in her mind as a child was doing what her dad should have been doing. And when a child is in that kind of a circumstance, whether they run away from home or whatever the case is, a child is always the most vulnerable person in any room, no matter what. If my kids are in this room, they're the most vulnerable kids. It's not just poor kids.
Right.
Any kid, because they can't do anything without an adult. So for her, she was living in this constant vulnerability and constant survival mode. And a lot of people would judge that decision to give him a blowjob. But without knowing the story, right? It's easy to judge. But when you hear the story, you go, oh, a no means they now have nothing again.
Yeah. And you're not, and I think it's important too to address this. It's not like you're saying this is okay.
No.
It's that I'm trying to put in perspective what this person is going through to make where they made this decision.
Building compassion so that we can recognize it in people, because our judgment keeps us from seeing it.
Yeah.
And so, no, like, we immediately took action. You know, when those stories come to the surface, we have to make this really hard turn with people sometimes, where we go, hey, because of what you've said, we have to sort of pull back the curtain a little bit and say, we got to do something. And so we were able to. We worked with law enforcement. This dude was so bold that he was at her school. He was listed as a family contact.
Oh, shit.
He had put himself under as an uncle. So that was going on. But also she had a court case coming up in juvenile court for she had been in trouble for a few things. And he came to her court date. Well, we knew he was coming. And so what we were able to do was, when he came in, we went out in the parking lot and got his license plate number, called law enforcement, and then he got arrested. And I believe he's still serving time. So it's just important to understand both sides of it. It's important to understand the, like, kick the door in and get them out. And it's important to understand that. But it's really important for us to understand how people get into these circumstances. Not just kids, adults too. It's baseline survival is typically...
And I feel like too, and this is just me listening from what you're telling me, it's a delicate scenario for you, because once you make that hard right turn to then help them out, do they see you as someone who's not you know what I mean? Like, you're taking those things away immediately.
I think that could easily happen. It doesn't typically happen for us because we are so highly relational on the front end. Yeah. And we are very careful with those conversations.
So you're taking precautions to make sure this is the...
Yeah. And by the time, a lot of time, not always, sometimes those stories come out really quick and we don't have earned trust yet. And in those cases, it can get a little difficult. I mean, a scenario would be maybe someone goes into an ER, we get called in, we interview, we find out that's what's happening. We've had women just straight up bolt out of the hospital. So I'm not saying it goes well every time. In the case that we have earned some trust, because here's the truth, we are building relationships with women and children because we care about them, not to get information.
Yeah. And well, here too, what happens next? What happens with her? What does she do next? When that's taken away, you know what I mean? Yeah, the horrible part and the support.
That's right. You can't expect people to take an exit strategy out of something if there's not a next step. And we always tell people who want to get into the work of trafficking is like, man, if you can't back up what you're saying, don't do it.
Well, what was the next step for her after that?
So for anyone that we encounter that is in those kind of circumstances, Purchased has any and every response you could imagine for someone. Because not everyone is ready necessarily for, like, we have a residential program. Not everyone's ready for that. Okay. And we're really realistic. We understand. I always put myself in their shoes and be like, I would never go with a stranger to some house. You know what I mean? Like, we are reasonable and we know, man, the odds, now it happens. It does happen. It actually happens a lot more than I would think it does. But the big decision to go from an ER to like getting in your car and going with you out to this house to start a program, that is a big jump. It's a big jump for people. People have to be real desperate typically. Yeah. And so not everyone is ready for that. So at Purchase, we sort of have all of these different responses that we can offer. We can offer all full blown, where you move into our home, we assume financial responsibility of you. You are here, we protect you. If you need an alias, you have one. And we help you through a year-long program, and then we help you get employment and the full thing, all the way to maybe you're not ready for that. We have an outpatient, we have a bunch of different things. And then, to be honest with you, there's also a group of women who don't want any of that, who are just like, F that. I don't want to do any kind of program, but I do want people, and I need people. And some of, it's funny, I always say that, like, I'm a magnet to those particular women. They're my favorites, but I'm a magnet there. Most of the ones that are like, I don't want nothing you're selling, are like, will you be my friend? Yeah. But what we find is that even in that category, if because we're like, sure, like, you don't have to do our program for us to be in your life. This is not some weird, because the truth is there's a lot of programs out there that are like, if you don't do our program, then, but that's exactly what they're used to. Yeah. If you don't do what I say, so we're like, bro, this is your choice. Like, I just had this conversation 2 weeks ago with a girl who has since been arrested, thankfully. But I said, look, you know what we have. I've told you this 10 times. We've had this conversation. You know how to get into this program. You know what all the programs are, but it's your choice. And I told her to her face, I said, my experience of you is that you're not willing to do the hard work. So don't do it if you don't want to do it. I think that makes people really uncomfortable, because I think people are like, well, you should be convincing them to do it. I'm like, no, because if you understand exploitation, what you understand is that's all they know is being convinced to do something. And if we're the first voice that's saying, hey, we want better for you, but we want you to choose it. And sometimes what that translates to, that I think people in the community struggle with, is maybe a girl comes into an ER or wherever she's identified, and we go and talk to her and she doesn't want help, and so we leave. I think that people really struggle with that particular thing, because it's, well, you can't leave. And we're like, well, but if we stay and if we keep, saying these things when she has clearly said she doesn't want help. Yeah.
We left her. This is an adult scenario.
An adult. Only with kids. It's
right,
kids. Exactly. It doesn't matter. Exactly. A kid, you're like, don't matter what you want.
You're getting help. No matter what.
With adults, we'll leave our card and we'll be like, hey, totally up to you. I think people really struggle with that.
Yeah, but once again, they don't understand. Yeah. I mean, if you don't understand, I mean, I just, your opinion's going down, it's just at the bottom of my list of if it's something.
And what's really cool, what we find, and this is just because we have history, we're 14 years into this, and you can only know this with history, but early on, those conversations where people didn't want help felt like a failure to me. Like I was like, oh my gosh, But what I have found over this long history of doing it is most of the time we hear from them again. And this happened just this week. There was a girl who came into our program and didn't graduate, like left, didn't go well. But she still, like this week, she came by our building just to say, hey, she wants to volunteer. And her life is completely different and restored, and she looked amazing, and she has an incredible job, and she's raising her kids. And I just was like, oh yeah, it's okay that sometimes what we're offering is not the thing. We can't be everyone's savior, but the truth is that doesn't mean that small role we played in their life didn't matter, because she's still showing up at our building and she still wants to volunteer here and claims my life is completely different because of you guys. And we're looking at each other like, you wanted to burn this place down. You know what I'm saying? Like it helps you to sort of relax into the work, because you go, man, I want adults. I want these women to have autonomy of their life. I want them to feel that if they're here, it's because they choose it. No one's in our program by force. They're there of their own decision, and they can leave of their own decision. We had a girl one time leave in the middle of the night, and she broke a window. And when she came back to get her stuff, the only thing I said to her was like, you could have just gone out the front door. Now nobody's keeping you here. Yeah. Now I got to fix the window. You know what I mean? Like, hey, this front door is always open, and no one's forcing you to be here. And I think that it's possibly why we have such a good retention rate, is because it doesn't feel like a rehab. It's like, as soon as we can give you autonomy of some sort, we want to give it to you. And so, because that's such an important piece for women who have been exploited specifically. Now, we're not a drug rehab. That's different. Yeah. We're working with women who have had all of their power taken from them and all of their decisions and all of their autonomy. So we got to give that back as quick as we can, because, again, going back to the Maslow's hierarchy of need, that's an easy way to exploit people, but it's also the best way to serve people, is to teach them, you do actually have these needs, and we want to show you how to get these needs met for yourself in a way that is healthy. And it sort of rewires all of that brokenness that comes from, because a lot of times they think it's my fault because I needed something. And it's like, no, I need the same things you need. It's just that someone exploited that. Yeah. And so let's teach you how to be okay with your needs and how to find the way to get these needs met in a way that's healthy. And that takes, our programs, they are a dance. It is a lot of work, and it's like sometimes like handling a grenade, but it's worth it. It's worth the work, because you're seeing women who are known in our city for the worst stuff. They've gone before a judge 15 times. They've, all these things. They've been arrested 17 times in their adult life. And then you see this light bulb go off, and that change forever, which is just like literally the coolest thing ever. So it's hard work, but if you can relax into it and not feel the weight of, we have to do something right now, and this person has to make this decision right now, it makes it a little more sustainable to understand that, like, hey, we've had women who reach out to our hotline after having our number for 5 years and us never hearing from them. We had a really funny story, since I can tell any story on this podcast, but she called the hotline, and she was like, hey, I just bolted from the place that my pimp was holding me. I need someone to come get me. And so we didn't know who this woman was. So we picked up, we have some protocols that we do. We always pick up a dude that's trained, and, we get him we all get in the car. Yeah. It was really funny, but she was like, we were like, where are you? And she was like, I'm in the woods. We're like, okay, well, where? And she's like, I'm between this tree and this tree. She used some expletives. Yeah. And I was like, well, you're gonna have to give us more. Anyways, so we finally found her. She bolts out of the woods, gets in our car. We have some protocols in place for that kind of a situation, because we don't take those kinds of situations directly out to our houses just because we have no idea what's going
danger.
on.
I mean, you don't want to bring that front to someone else.
We took the protocol. I can't really speak to exactly what we do just because it's kind of a hidden thing. But anyways, we went through those protocols, and so we had her in safety, and she was getting checked out and all this kind of stuff. So she was, coming down. She was a little more calm, and we were like, "How did you know to call us?" Like, it was so crazy. Like, it was just out of nowhere. And she's like, "Oh, I got your number from a girl that danced at Hustler," because we go there all the time, and we give out our number. And we're like, "Oh, that's cool." Like, when did you get it recently? She's like, "Oh no, it's like 5 years ago." And she turns her phone around. She's like, "I just saved it in my phone." She hands it to me, and our hotline was saved in her phone as Louisiana Ho Help. And I said,
I'm not laughing because that's a bad thing.
No, I literally died laughing, and I was like, well, there's our new tagline. But how incredible. I mean, 5 years prior, somebody just randomly gave her the card that we passed out, and when push came to shove, it's the way she got out. So I've just learned to relax into this thing and go, man, first of all, God cares about these people more than I do. So at the end of the day, I can fight and kick and scream, but it's his job to take care of them. I can do my part every day, and I do, but I'm not ultimately responsible.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing. But then just understanding, if she walks out today, we'll see her again. I mean, we're here. We're not going anywhere. They know where to go. And often when someone's not ready, in the future when they are and they're seeking safety, they know where to go. They reach out, they call, or they get arrested. Here's the other thing. We haven't seen them in years and they get arrested. They know who to call, Yeah. So when you're somewhere long enough with longevity and consistency, it really does start to matter to people. And eventually most women that we deal with come back around in some way, and we're able to be in relationship with them. So that's just stuff people don't know.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah,
man.
It's a lot.
Look, I'm glad that I've been wanting to know this information, but I wanted to sit down with you. I wanted to wait and do it here.
Yeah,
because it's just something that gets thrown around like we talked about at the beginning, to where people don't really understand what it is, how it works, the protocol, or also the truth behind all of these things, whether it's in our community or someone else's. And then real quick before we wrap, the homelessness situation, I wanted to talk about that because that's essentially how you got into this, right? What are you seeing more commonality in with these individuals that end up on the street? Is it a mix of everything, or do you see something more than something else? Or
I think what's important for people to understand right now, especially, is all of us are feeling the effects of our economy, correct? I don't know. I'm sure you're feeling it the same way I am. It's crazy. Yeah. I check out at the grocery store and I'm literally like, what did I buy? Our budgets are feeling that, things are inflation, everything's more expensive. Everything has gone up. Well, government benefits and fixed income hasn't. And so what's happening is it's creating this new population of people who find themselves under the poverty line, or find themselves now having to make decisions between keeping my lights on or buying groceries. And so I think, because I've been hearing a lot of people be like, oh, there's so many more panhandlers. And I'm like, yeah, think about it. We have to think outside of, this makes me uncomfortable, so I don't like it. Nobody likes someone coming up to their window and being like, give me some money. I get that. But if we're just, all we're doing is complaining about that and not thinking why. I had someone recently be like, well, it's really hard for us to kind of get involved and give because it seems like it's not helping. And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, that's not fair. Second of all, we have to think about the world. You have to think about what's going on.
How do you combat? Here's a good question for this, because I think this is the information I'm digging for, but didn't know how to ask it. How do you combat people saying, well, those people don't care. Yeah. They're just on drugs. The typical reaction you get, how do you combat that and show people that this is how you can make a difference and this is what's actually going on?
So the hard answer to how to combat that is relationship with the person.
Got you.
Now, educating people on realities is what we're doing all the time. We're saying, hey,
That's really hard to do these days.
It is really hard to do. But what we find is that most people don't want to be standing out there panhandling. I think that's important to remember. When people say things like, why don't they just
get a job?
Just get a job. To us, that feels like an easy endeavor. Mm-hmm. To someone who does not have an ID, does not have a social security card, doesn't have a car, doesn't have a resume, has a rap sheet, whatever. There is no just about it. To go from point A to getting a job is a very complicated answer. And we are helping people do that every day. But so the just get a job thing really falls flat if you know exactly what's going on in that person's life. You may see a female panhandler and be like, she just needs to get a job. And you may not know that she's being abused or trafficked. I mean, like, you just don't know. Mental illness does play a role. Drug addiction does play a role, but I would not say that those are like the reasons. I think you have to take into effect a lot of reasons why people end up where they are. Early trauma in their life, childhood trauma, early mental health issues, sexual abuse early on, the economy, generational poverty. I mean, so when you make this quick judgment of someone at the red light, it's just inaccurate. It's false. And so understanding that what it takes for someone to move from living outdoors to living indoors is it takes an army of people to help that person make that happen. And we're doing it. It's worth it. And we're doing it. But it's just not as easy as, let's just give them 50 grand and they'll be fine. No, they have broken identity. They don't understand what to do with money. I mean, there's just so much that's behind that. But I do think it's important for people. So at the Lovewell Center downtown, we serve people in material poverty. And we do that through, they can earn credits and then use their credits to shop in our stores. We have some really awesome stores. We have a grocery store, a food store, and a laundromat. So it gives us actually, because they scan their card, we can kind of track stuff. And I would say before COVID, ish, we would have maybe 50, 60 shoppers a day. We're having 150, 200 a day. I mean, it is just we cannot keep up with the amount of new memberships because it's a club. We can't keep up with the amount of new memberships we're getting. And it's because because of the economy and inflation and minimum wage being what it is and all of that stuff, it's created this new population of people that cannot survive on their minimum wage, hourly pay. It would be
described as the working poor right now.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just important for us to connect the dots that if it's impacting us, then it's impacting others. If we're feeling the strain, typically what we're having to do is cut out just like eating out or whatever, our fluff money. But if we're feeling the strain, other people are also feeling the strain, but they're not in the position to be able to cut out just a few things and keep them rolling. They're in a position of, I either have electricity or I don't. Or I was talking with a girl who showed me her budget. And I was like, where's your food budget? She's like, oh, I don't budget for food. I can't. That's a reality. And she was working 40 hours a week, every week. Okay. And so I think it's just really important. Again, it goes back to building compassion and just knowing and sort of shaking out of this slumber that I think we can get into if all of our information is coming from echo chambers online. Is like shaking out of that and being like, hold on, let me think for myself for a second and let me put these puzzle pieces together and think and go, well, if this is the case for me, then it's the case for that person on the corner as well. If I can't afford things I used to, then neither can they. If you see, like, sort of break out of this like weird slumber we get in, that's like, oh, well, they just don't want to XYZ. They don't want to get a job or they're taking advantage of people. I promise you, because I know most of them. That's another funny thing is I know everybody that's paid. But I had this really funny thing happen where I was pulling out of a parking spot. I had my sunglasses on. My window was down. And I knew him. I could see him in the side thing. He starts telling me a story, And And I roll my window. I said, Curtis. And he said, oh, and what? You don't have kids and you don't have a car, so you're not out of gas on the side of the interstate, you know.
But I am broke.
Yeah, but you are broke. And
how about you just tell me that? Hey, bro,
yeah.
I'm broke. I need some help.
Yeah.
That's better for me. I'll just
listen, Curtis, I know you. You ain't got a car on the side of the road with 2 kids in it. So go to the Lovewell. You know how to get there, you know. But again, the hardest answer that people don't want to hear is if you have a relationship with someone, it changes the game. If you just know their name like that. I have people all the time ask me specifically about like people in the corner asking for money. What do I do? Ask them their name. Introduce yourself. Like, you don't have to give them anything. Like, I don't give them something every time. Just say, hey, I'm Cassie. What's your name? That's what people don't understand, is that that's how you start combating some of this stuff. I know we have to go, but I do have a story about this.
No, you're good. We have plenty of time. I want to make sure there's a few things that I definitely want to.
Yeah, there's a guy that hangs out on the same bus stop on my drive home every day, and me and my kids we saw him all the time, and we tried to talk to him one time, and he was like really mean and cussed us out and all that kind of stuff. And my kids are used to that. I mean, you know, they're being raised in some very strange ways.
Hey, which kudos to you, because that's going to give them a lot of knowledge.
And so I just told him, I was like, look, he didn't know us yet.
Yeah.
So we decided, me and my girls, that all we were going to do next time we saw him was just wave at him. We weren't going to roll the windows down because that didn't go well. And so for a few weeks we just waved, and, you know, he didn't really recognize or didn't really acknowledge. But then one day we waved, and he sort of waved back, and my kids were like, oh, and I was like, yeah, okay. So progress. So then, you know, we wave every day we're waving. Well, one day we come over the hill and he sees my car, and he gets up off the bus stop and he starts walking my direction, and he's waving big and smiling. And I was like, okay. You know, so this was months and months and months. So finally one time I caught the red light, and so he was waving at us, and I rolled down the window, and he put his head in my car, and he's like, I'm Eric. And I was like, okay. And I just said, I'm Cassie. And that's all I said. And my girls were like, oh, they were so excited. They're like, we got to give him something. I was like, no, we don't. We got his name. That's a big deal. So fast forward now, we're friends with this dude. Like, and I know that probably really soon I'm going to be able to pull that curtain back and say, hey, here's what I do for a living.
Yeah.
And I would love to. And I know that when I have that conversation with him, it's going to go far better than it would have the first time. And now I know that his favorite food is spaghetti. And I know things about him that matter. And this is a really funny part of it. My husband decided for some reason to buy the same car. We have the same car. He bought the same car twice. Same color. This is a whole nother podcast. I don't want to get into it because it makes me really mad. But funny is that Eric was like, I keep waving at your car and the person's not waving back. I was like, that's not me. That's my. So he's paying attention. And the other day I was back in traffic at this light, and he ran all the way back. We're friends. And I say that that's the hard.
He still doesn't know what you do.
No. I say that that's the hard answer because it is the hard answer. Nobody like that takes, we're talking about weeks. But like the last time I saw him, I did give him a bag with stuff in it that we had put together for him. But no, he doesn't know what I do. I'm going to tell him soon because I don't want him living outdoors. Yeah. But what I want more for him than just like, hey, here's a bunch of, I want him to feel like a person. Yeah. And to be like, I am a person with a favorite food, and this family knows me and knows that I love spaghetti and has never asked anything of me. And so when people have these negative reactions to panhandlers, it makes me really sad because I'm like, man, that could be your friend. Like you could know their name. You don't have to bring them to your house or anything like that, but you don't have to put them in your car. But the power of Eric being a person will eventually mean something about him taking some steps to change. If poverty really skews someone's identity, especially if it's extreme poverty and homelessness, it skews people's identity to where they do not feel worthy of XYZ, or they don't believe they can. And so when people say, well, they just need to get into a house, or they just need to get a job. Well, a lot of what it takes for us to do that is confidence in ourselves and who we are and understanding. So for someone like Eric, who is so far on the spectrum away from success, the best thing for him is to believe in himself and to remember, I'm a person on this planet that matters. And maybe if I just matter to this one white Subaru and this crazy white lady and her two internationally, I mean, my kids are like not white. I'm sure he's like, who are these people? But he matters to us, and he knows that. That matters in the equation of getting him to what we would call success. Because I can't do that work for him. He's going to have to do the work to get off the street. And if he doesn't believe in himself, if he feels like society's forgotten about me, he will never start that process. So I just think it's important for people to know that. And for people to just know at a base level, if all you do is make someone feel like a person again, you have done something huge. Because everyone deserves that. Yeah. Like, everyone deserves the dignity of belonging and mattering. And you don't have to give them money. I don't give them money. My youngest is always really mad. She's like, why don't we have money? And I'm like, I'm not giving them money because I know what they do with it. You know, sometimes you don't have to give them money. You don't have to feel pressured, but it is, roll your window down and just say, I'm Cassie. What's your name? You've done something in their brain and in their heart. You may not feel like it, but you have. And I wish that I could tell more people that simplicity of like, it may not be your responsibility to get them off the street, but they're still a person. And that alone matters.
Yeah.
So.
Poof, man. We're going to have to do another one of these.
Okay.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
I would love to.
Yeah. Before we wrap this up, one, thank you so much. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I got to process all this, and everyone else listening and watching are going to have to too. But I think it's great to know these things, get this information out there. And real quick, run through all these organizations and these outreaches if you don't mind, and get your little plug going.
I would love, you can just go to thehubministry.com and everything's there. Okay. It's all in one place. You can serve, donate, everything. It's all in one place, thehubministry.com. You can follow us on socials at The Hub Ministry. We communicate everything. So if you want to know about anything about the Hub, if you want to learn more about Purchased or the Lovewell, or we have a coffee company, whatever it is, it's all there on that website. And then we are always looking for volunteers. We use volunteers every day in what we do. There's also a list on the website of things we need, like items that we need for our stores. And
can I bring my kids?
Yes.
Sweet.
Yes. We have lots of kids come and serve with us. So so everything's there on the hubministry.com. Any question they have would be answered there.
Awesome.